Welcome to Dadograms. The other day I walked into a barbershop, sat down, and found myself trapped. Every barber chair had a massive television screen in front of it, all tuned to the same news network. For about 15 minutes straight, I was force-fed bullshit, some of the most sensational, manipulative nonsense I've heard in a long time. And that experience got me thinking. I've spent decades watching the news, first as a kid, then as a Navy pilot, and now as a retired commander. And over the years, I've learned something important that a lot of people don't seem to know. The news you're watching isn't designed to inform you. It's designed to entertain you. So you stay put and you keep watching. And once you understand that, you'll never see it the same way again. I'm Jason M. Garrett, and I created Dadograms to help teach my kids and all of you how to win in life. And that means I also need to teach you how not to lose. And if you're a news junkie, glued to the continuous feed, waiting for the next big thing, you're losing. And today, I'm going to teach you how to turn that loss into a win. So let's get to it. Now, I've always been drawn to the news. As a kid, I can remember Mom cooking dinner with the evening news on in the background. The world seemed to unfold before my eyes. History in real time. I remember the Falkland War, where the British warships and Argentinian forces clashed at sea, and I watched it broadcast on the news every night. I remember the Challenger disaster. I had dreams of becoming an astronaut, and I recorded every space shuttle launch back then on a VHS tape. And I paid close attention to the news for weeks afterwards, trying to figure out, like everybody else, what exactly had gone wrong. And I will never forget January 1991. I got home late from work one night and just happened to turn on the television. It was tuned into CNN, the only real continuous news network back then, and as I stood in my living room, I saw the first airstrikes at Desert Storm lighting up Baghdad like the 4th of July. As a Navy ROTC midshipman, it was beyond fascinating for me. When I was serving in my first fleet squadron, the Grandmasters of HSL 46, we watched the horror of the 9/11 attacks unfold live on television. All of us pilots wanted to take to the air, but by presidential order, we were grounded. And so found ourselves glued to the television, watching the events play out live. In all of those moments I just mentioned, news was not entertainment. It was fact. It was how we learned what was happening, what it meant to us, and what we needed to do about it. It was actionable. We could adjust our lives based on news facts that soon would be affecting all of us. But something changed in the early 2000s. Maybe it was the rise of the internet, where anyone could publish news and influence public perception. Maybe it was the explosion of 24-hour news networks that kept viewers engaged around the clock. Either way, I noticed a shift. News stopped being just facts. It became emotional. Stories evolved throughout the day, not because events had changed, but because networks had to stretch content to fill airtime. They learned something very powerful. The longer they kept you watching, the more money they made. And that's when news stopped being just news. It became a business. Cable news networks like CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they don't sell news, they sell attention. They've mastered the art of keeping you watching, using psychological tactics that trigger outrage, fear, and tribalism. They frame the stories in a way that stir your emotions, not that inform your intellect. They build suspense like a TV drama. They dangle breaking news banners for hours, even when there's nothing new. They create false urgency, making you feel like if you stop watching, you'll be left behind. And they don't just report the news, they tell you how to feel about it. Folks, that's not journalism. That's manipulation. Now, I figured this out in about 2012. That year, I took on a very unusual job inside the Navy. I became the speechwriter for the 4-star admiral in charge of the United States Pacific Fleet, responsible for our Navy operating in over half the world's oceans. I also became the deputy director of the commander's strategic think tank and deputy public affairs officer for community outreach. My job required me to consume vast amounts of news, not as a passive viewer, but as someone who needed to extract truth from noise. I had to identify hard facts, strip away emotional bias, and understand what mattered strategically. I learned to recognize real reporting versus sensationalism. And that's when I truly saw just how much of the news was actually entertainment. So if you want to win in life, which is what I teach in Dadograms, let me show you how to stop getting suckered. Let me show you how to watch the news without being manipulated, and ideally use the facts you glean from the news to use in your own life to win. Here's how you do it. First, stick to traditional news formats. That's right. The old school nightly news on ABC, CBS, and NBC. The ones that air once a day for half an hour. They tend to be more fact-based than 24-hour news networks. Why? Because they don't have to stretch a single story into an all-day saga. They get one chance a day to play the news story for you, and it has to be as succinct as possible. And they are held to high journalistic standards. On occasion, when a journalist is found to have intentionally manipulated the facts they reported, they get fired. Publicly. It happened to Dan Rather with CBS in 2004 and Brian Williams with NBC in 2015. If they aren't dealt with in that way, the news program can lose credibility as a legitimate news source, and those networks aren't going to risk that. Again, they hold to high standards in these programs, despite what you hear. Next, reader news. Print sources. Yes, printed on paper. Like the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, and Reuters. And I do know that they can be delivered to your phones, and that's all good. The point I'm trying to make is that news sources that you have to read tend to separate facts from opinions better than televised news. When you read, you absorb information without the emotional manipulation of dramatic music, voice inflection, and video editing. 3. Watch multiple news outlets. Compare how CNN, Fox, and the BBC report the same story. Combine that with all the other sources that you're pulling from, and you'll quickly find that while there are many things said, some facts are consistent across all news sources. Those facts are the truth of the story that you need to take away. 4. Prioritize local news. The news that directly impacts you, weather, city policies, school updates, is far more important in your life than the latest DC drama. You'll be able to prepare for the coming storm. In our case here in Florida, that's those damned hurricanes. You'll know of fire breakouts if your area is prone to them, or snowstorms. You'll learn about issues that may affect your drive into work, and on and on. Local news is actionable news that really can affect you and that you can use to your advantage. So listen to it. 5. Use headlines to your advantage. If you use sources like Google News or 1440 and so on, just skim headlines and get a sense of what's happening. If you're a slow reader, like me, just skimming headlines is the way to go. If you see something that you need to know more on, then pick that article and skim it for the facts that you need. Don't get suckered into reading every speculative take. 6. Be wary of emotional triggers. If a story makes you feel outraged, panicked, or filled with righteous anger, ask yourself, is this fact or am I being played? Big hint, you're probably being played. 7. Use continuous news strategically. If you must watch 24-hour news, because I know it's sometimes just there in your face like with me in that barbershop, just consider it strictly a form of entertainment. They want you to be hooked, so you stay tuned in as long as possible. If you look at it from that point of view, you're going to be much happier, and you can still possibly derive some useful facts from it. Again, if you get emotional watching it, you're being suckered, so turn it off and look away if you feel your emotions starting to come on. 8. If your needs are very, very specific or very niche, like mine with business, where I need to know news about tax policy changes, interest rate changes, trends in business and markets, then search out news sources that focus on those. For me, I listen to a lot of podcasts and YouTube channels, way more than anything else. Sure, there's a lot of opinion mixed in those, but if you listen to them with that awareness, and you listen to many of them so you can gather the most consistent facts among all of them, that can help. This can help you win. Finally, remember the goal. You want to hear news so you can use it to win. News is a tool. Its value is in what you do with it. If it helps you make informed decisions that can minimize your losses or improve your gains in your personal life or your business life, that's great. That's what I use it for. But if it just makes you mad, anxious, tuned in, addicted, it's not serving you. It's using you. Final thoughts. Those 24-hour-a-day news programs can be entertaining, but don't mistake it for factual information. It's okay to watch, but watch smart, because the moment you let it control your emotions, they've won. So now that you know, are you going to keep getting suckered, or are you going to take back control? I hope you make the right decision for yourself, your family, your community, and even your nation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for this Dadogram. If you get a moment, go back and listen to a previous Dadogram. Unlike a lot of podcasts or YouTube channels out there, Dadograms are evergreen. They're relevant to your life now and will be relevant to your life far, far into the future. And as always, please subscribe to this channel, hit the thumbs up, and all that cool stuff. Until next time, know what you're watching and watch it to win.